Hello, everyone, once again. I'm Nicoleta, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Communication Working Group. And this is our fourth webinar as part of the MCAA Around the World webinar series. And this webinar series we run each month on the second Friday. And today it's our great pleasure to have with us three amazing speakers. And we will talk about career development and research funding for MCAA researchers and beyond. And this webinar is co-organized in partnership with the Switzerland chapter. I would like to thank Teodota Laguri for her leadership in organizing this webinar. And so the way we organize the webinar, this webinar is that I'll present each of the speakers for you to have a background about each of them. Then Isabella will give us her presentation, and then we'll continue with the other two speakers, and the event itself will end with a Q&A session. And so Isabelle, she studied biology at the ETH in Zurich and also obtained a master in neurobiology. After her PhD in neuroscience at ETH in Zurich, she also followed a postdoc at the University of Freiburg and is working now at EURESEARCH as an MCAA national contact point since 2017. Then we have with us Christian Weber, who is a researcher with the Institute of Knowledge-Based Systems and Knowledge Management at the University of Siegen, Germany. Within his PhD, he was working on developing semantic and structure word concept importance measures for domain knowledge to guide digital learning using knowledge graphs. He's continuously researching on the exploitation of evolving knowledge maps and AI solutions for an ongoing industrial, educational, and medical digitalization. He's active for that in national and international funded research projects, several of them, but also through industrial collaborations, as well as supporting the next push of AI-powered tech startups. He believes that any digital solution has to have a human factor, and so do AI-based visions. And also with us today is Béla Schmidt. He trained to be an immunologist when he was earning his PhD in Hungary, but he got interested in cell biology and protein quality control during his first postdoctoral position. He found the handling of misfolded proteins in the cell fascinating for a long time. He studied the chaperone interactions, ubiquitination, endoplasmic reticulum-associated degradation, proteasomal degradation, and vesicular transport of several disease-associated proteins, as he was going through a succession of postdoctoral positions, first at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, USA, then at the University of Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, also in the USA. After spending 16 years in the US, he returned to Europe and got a Marie Curie fellowship to study the aggregation of a tumor suppressor protein, P53, in a stem cell model he set up in the VIB switch laboratory at the long-standing QU Leuven in Leuven, Belgium. He liked it there, but he had to move on due to the lack of funding. He had a brief but pleasant engagement at a small biotechnology company in Hungary, and he jumped at the opportunity to return to Leuven as an innovation manager at the Stem Cell Institute of QU Leuven. Unfortunately, this position turned out to be a poor fit for him, so he left it after 2.5 years. Béla is now at the Switch laboratory, where he has been working as a science writer for almost 3 years. And I'll take also the opportunity to encourage the audience to check for Béla's publication in Nature Career column about what 50 principal investigators taught him about the failure to land Tanner. And also, I will encourage every one of you to go and check his recent book on career advice for young scientists in biomedical research. With that, I will invite Isabelle to join us.
Of course.
Thank you, Christian, for joining. I hope I understood it right, that you are going to share with us what Marie Curie Alumni Association, what kind of support it offers to young researchers. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and welcome again. And I'm happy we have nearly 6 o'clock. It's going towards the evening of Friday. So hello to every listener now. Yeah, indeed. I'm the chair of the MCAA Research Funding Working Group, and I have the great opportunity today to talk a bit about what we're doing. And all of this is happening in the mix between research funding and careers. And even though I talk about research funding now, careers will always pop up. I named it finally What We Do in the Shadows because maybe you haven't seen me, even if you're from MCAA, because the opportunities are rare. We are only meeting if it's about research funding and if you have a project to carry it in the organization. And in fact, I will also talk a bit about that because I have that belief that how the organization works is very similar to how a researcher has to work. And so the organization has a career perspective. You're welcome to ask questions anytime, and I hope that works well. Yeah. So first of all, I will talk a bit about motivation. Then I will talk a bit about the work we have, and afterwards a bit about projects we are supporting to give you an impression what could happen. And interestingly, both of them also have done a career perspective. So somehow research funding really became the heart of researcher careers nowadays. Even if you're from a discipline like social science, where research funding is not a prominent, you may get into a position that if you want to get a professor position, they will ask you about your research funds. And it's a very curious thing we cannot solve most probably today, why that is. But I brought some of the reasons. I believe very strongly that somehow we become overburdened, and so are all the evaluators. So there is a kind of continuous push to push evaluation into the hands of others. And this actually fits to the notion of peer review. So the idea that if multiple researchers from multiple areas or multiple geographical areas are looking at what you are doing, then most likely it is of high quality, and then you can go on. And with this, we are somehow solving the problem that, yeah, the speed is high, but finding out what quality is hard. But that means that research funding is not only to enable your research in terms of you have time and money to do so, but it also means that it is used as a means of evaluating your career. And therefore, it is always very exciting to have funding, but it also becomes a kind of a desperate thing. And we will see later on that the projects which are also talking about research funding, which are brought today, they're also busy with mental health because it has some strong implications. So why is research funding important for MCAA? The obvious question is because when you're a member of MCAA, you're thinking of research funding for your career, but there's also another reason, because MCAA as an alumni association is actually full of excellent members. So everyone who joined the MCAA already had a Marie Curie fund, which we know is very hard to land in terms of research funding and also to get hired. So we have a lot of members, excellent members from many different disciplines, and they're all coming together and they're bringing up a potential for research funding out of MCAA itself. So it somehow makes sense to not only inform, but to also manage this potential. What's very important, this comes also with some kind of individual needs. So what the heck do we do in the shadows? What is the research funding working group doing for you? There are three major areas. The first one, which I will talk firstly about now, is all about supporting MCAA, because MCAA is a big vehicle. We are having a nice travel towards our future careers in. We can exchange, we can plan, we can meet new people, we can have interesting new ideas. But to do so, the vehicle has to be maintained. So indeed, somehow sustainability and supporting MCAA itself became a major topic. Then, of course, we want to bring together the members. We have now the communication working group here, and communication brings us together, but also research funding, because it's a shared and somehow cross-cutting topic. It brings us together in terms of what we talk about. And then last but not least, we of course are also running task forces which are busy with many different topics. And it is also where individualization comes in, because if you join us and you're interested in a topic, you can start and lead it and we will support you. And then together we may have new ideas. So let's look a bit at what we are doing in the shadows itself. So there is one major area which is actually very busy with sustainability of MCAA itself. it is about being a contact point for external interest when it is about research grants. And there are two major areas, presenting MCAA as a kind of a future or potential partner for research grants. And the other one is to give actually support for research grant writing. So what we are doing is we're having request management. You can ask us, there is a link. We're getting a lot of messages, and we are somehow acting as a broker to figure out if this is something that works with MCAA. And we are working very closely with the board. So if there's something interesting, we will figure out what is it, what are the details, to broker with the board if this is something where the organization can support. So it's really a kind of a divide and conquer approach, because funding is about the organization, but on the other hand, the organization is busy with the members. What we are also doing in this regards is we are brokering experts. So MCAA itself is a large database of experts from all different fields, and many of them have already experiences in writing a grant. So if there is a topic very much interested for MCAA, it's very likely that you find in the chapters or other working groups, people who are actually having the exact important expertise to support that. And then we give a hint. So if that actually worked and we have a continuously working flow of interaction, then what we're also doing is we are advertising from internal to external what we are actually doing with research funding. And this is the tautology slide, because it's actually what I'm doing today, which means to show what are the potentials for having MCAA as a partner, what are we doing, what is research funding all about if MCAA is involved. We are a relatively young working group, so we have like 4 years of path. I'm the second chair actually, so our structures are still growing. So expect in the next months to have advertisement material where we are actually clarifying how we can support you. So in that sense, we are also brokering again speakers for events like today, and also to have contact points if it's about research. This is a bit tedious. However, you may reflect now, this is boring, this is tedious, this sounds like what I'm doing every day. It is because research funding is part of what we're actually doing every day. So we are either busy thinking about our research career or what the future can be, and then research funds are a part of it. And acquiring those is actually a starting point, but then comes the problem, you have a research grant, what the heck should you do with it? Because it comes with responsibilities. We had the topic of PI early on, I have seen, where you are the principal investigator, so you're responsible for managing projects, and this is also the case for MCAA. So we are actually responsible to support running projects, or in some cases, we are actually helping directly running the projects by putting people into charge. We implemented last year for the first time in, I don't know, ages, a procedure for hiring people. And actually 2 weeks ago, we hired the first MCAA members for MCAA partner run projects. So we have now official employees of MCAA with, how's it called? A consultant contract, who are working for projects for MCAA for different research areas. And in this regards, we are also then again brokering the participation. It's a bit of a tricky thing because this is obviously something that cannot be centralized, but we can support you if you have questions. If you're running a project together with MCAA, we can support you. So now it becomes interesting because it gets closer to your career. The MCAA is an organization which gets research funds from the European Commission. However, this is far not enough to run the whole apparatus of the MCAA. So to further grow and professionalize ourselves, we actually got aware that we need sustainability in terms of future money. And this has to go far beyond simply getting, I don't know, sponsorship or getting any type of money from the industry. So we somehow have to find a way to harness the potential of our ground floor members to put research funding into a position that MCAA can profit from it. How can we profit? There are actually two ways. One is we can have impact from the projects and get visibility and gain more projects. That's one part. And this is actually a large part for which we are hired. So dissemination is a big capability of MCAA. And on the other hand is the money side. So if we are acquiring funds from different directions, it gives us the capability to hire, for example, a permanent secretary. And those persons in reflection can then be there to help you, because they are not only responsible for the projects, that can also happen to help the members. So this is a bit tricky. So we will have a sustainability plan. It's about visibility of funding from different areas. So this is all just coming up, but we are expecting to get this running, because the more sustainable we become for MCAA, the more we can help you, because we are all voluntaries, and that means limited time. And the more we can push it into sustainable research positions, like in a real research organization, the better we can support you. And now I hope I rang a number of bells which may let you think about your personal research career. So a lot of considerations are now brought up are actually part of what you have to do or have to think of if it's about finding your personal research grant. So in the end, career is about sustainability of your research ideas, but also getting money to feed yourself and your family, and also have a perspective perhaps for future mobility to go somewhere where it's interested to go. We heard that in some areas it may be very tricky, like for example in Switzerland, where you are very dependent also beyond the national funds to get several connections to the European Commission, which are not always given. But if you think about sustainability, it's not only about finding a grant, it's also that you are not alone, because a long-lasting research career means that there has to be a team, either led by you or you will be part of the team. So what is your team? What are the capabilities you can bring into a research fund? Like, for example, MCAA, many members, many capabilities. How can you actually support not your own career, but also of your research colleagues who are then part of the team and your capability to go forward? And then, yeah, publish or perish, and also indirectly, because grants mean you can publish and hopefully not perish. This will be part of it. And I'm actually looking forward to Béla's presentation later on, because it sounded like he has all the experiences which foreshadows that. You need your network, you need your project management. So there are many considerations which are actually similar between both of them. And what you finally want to have for a research career is a portfolio. And as I said earlier, funding means you can put your research into your own hands, but it also means that you show the capability to acquire grants. And as more and more universities around Europe seem to be very bankrupt, it looks like the future is external research funds. It's a sad truth, but it also means that you can do the research which actually you can own and which fits to your CV. So assumingly, those are also good news. So, a short remark about our capabilities to support you. You already may have heard, if you have a good research idea and it involves MCAA being a partner, or for example for IDNs, sometimes we are training partners offering training through MCAA, and ITNs and doctoral networks are paying travel grants to support trainers for their mobility to train doctoral networks members. But in all of those cases, if you have a research grant or you're looking to acquire some, and MCAA can play a role, you can talk to us. If you're curious about research capabilities, you can also ask us, but it's of course greatly dependent on what members we are. So I'm from Germany, so I know about German research grants. I applied for a couple of European grants. I worked with Austria, which is actually a very drought experience because there's nearly no national funding. So it really depends on the members. But if you have a good idea, we can offer you guidance or we find a person to help you. So now looking at the watch, let's come to some projects and some examples how we actually support you. You can ask questions and I will address them, just let me know. So now, assuming that things already played out, I want to show you two actually running projects, and they are only a selection because I know that there are far more projects we are even aware of, because with more than 20,000 members, there can be a lot of them. So I will now show you two different projects. They are both Erasmus projects, EURESEARCH and Oscar. And what are they doing? How did MCAA help? And what role is MCAA playing in them, in those? And then also maybe questions from your side. How can that be mirrored to your situation? So the first one in line is the EURESEARCH project, where I'm actually coming up in a double position because I happen to be also the coordinator of the EURESEARCH project. And this was the first opportunity to put, for a long time, MCAA into the role of a full partner. And that also means we had to figure out hell of a lot of things to regulate that, from figuring out how to write contracts, how to pay lawyers, to check if the contracts are correct, hiring procedures, and all of that stuff. But today I want to talk a bit about the project because it also has a career perspective and it's cheap advertisement. So this is a project which started in 2019 and it will finish this year. And it's all about putting up a PhD training program. And for that, there's also a bit of motivation because PhD training program is all about PhD. So we are actually in the project looking at the situation of early researchers who are planning to get their PhD. And we are saying, and it's the thesis, it's an individual journey of overcoming hurdles. Both is important. Hurdles means it's somehow painful. You have to put in work. So there are physics involved, either your body physics or mental physics. So it's not so easy to actually do that. And it's somehow individual, and individual in a way that it's like, this is not a snowflake argument. This is an argument that every person coming to do their PhD has a unique background, unique environment, unique cultural background, unique interests. So that also means if you are hired, so people tell you you're good enough to do that, you're already bringing something to the table. So that there is also, it means it's also always a conflict between what you bring to the table and what your future PhD supervisor may bring to the table. And sometimes the tables are 10 meters away from each other, and that's a sad thing. So it's very hard to figure out where you are. It's very hard to overcome problems. And our answer for that in the project is that this can be overcome with training. This is not entirely true because training only puts you in the position that you have enough knowledge to actually see what's around you. And I like this example that when the room is dark, that everything is full of Lego bricks. Because you don't know if you step one step ahead, if your feet may hurt afterwards. So it's a bit of tricky. So with training, you have to have enough surrounding outlook that you see where you're going, but then you have to figure out how to get there. So what we said that actually PhD is a problem that affects all of the different domains, but training cannot be domain dependent if it should help everyone. So there should be cross-cutting topics, and this actually what we identified is mental well-being or mental health, open science and communication, and here called immersive storytelling. Mental well-being became a no-brainer. We heard that now with the COVID situation, we all became aware that this can become a problem. And if you're very good at ignoring your own mental health state, maybe you learned a lesson or two about that in the last 2 years. So it's something we have to be aware of, and where it's also a profit to train. Open science is interesting because it seems like it's a general push of opening science in Europe. And of course, we all say, oh yes, it's a good thing, because if it's open, then all the small Lego bricks for your research are there to put together in terms of openness. But it also means if you want to open something, you have to know, how do I do that? And how do I do that? You have to become aware of how research is actually happening. So it's providing you tools how to take care of your dissemination capabilities and your research plans. Last but not least, immersive storytelling. Yes, we know science communication is a thing, but you always have a narrative. So you see this narrative. I started here, I came from the kindergarten, and now I'm here. So what's my story? Why is it compelling that you want to hire me? And that also affects your research. Why is it compelling that your research does something for the, for your immediate surroundings? Why should your parents understand what you're doing? And interestingly, this is really tying everything together. So together, this becomes a universe, and you see, this is the map of partners, and some of them you may know. We have, University of Siegen is my own university. TRB is Gabor Kishmerk in the project. Trinity College, those are the counseling service for mental health. We have Seiling, they are busy with training. And Space, they are actually a collective for theater and immersive storytelling. EURESEARCH is a network in the European level for PhD students. Most likely you know it already. And last but not least, it's Marie Curie. Each of us has a different perspective bringing to the table. And Marie Curie is extremely important in this project because we are bringing in the diversity. We are bringing in the people who have the problems. That sounds scary, but actually we're bringing all the different domains and perspectives, and only then we can start to talk. And also we have the capability of disseminating such a varied environment. And that's where it becomes interesting. Now, I'm not sure. I think I should finish in 10 minutes. Yes, Theodota, you are saying yes. What the heck are we doing? We said, listen, we give you 5 days. In 5 days, we are doing training. And we scare you at the beginning because there's this dystopia, the horrible situation of getting a PhD. But maybe it's not that horrible. So what we're doing is throughout the week, we want to dispel the dystopia. And to do so, on the first day, we give you some insights and some lights. How can the future look like with and without dystopia? And there will be training throughout the week. And during the week, we want to flip the table. So we want to give you the opportunity to speak up and tell your story. And each day you get more tools, and each day you are becoming better and telling your own story. And that actually comes together in this interactive storytelling session. And at the end of the day or of the week, we expect you to tell what's your action plan. And this is the trick. This is why we are talking about a hackathon. We want you to hack your research plan and come up with one that works for you. It may be how to do it. It may be a visibility plan, whatever it is. We work it out together with you. And at the end, you should get agency. And agency means capability to change your environment, and it also has a positive effect on mental health. So at the end, you should not have your lunch plan, you should have a research plan. And this is the advertisement part. Please, you can check the QR code, you can check the presentation and go to the EURESEARCH page, and there will be another physical meeting. We don't know yet where it will be, but there's a likelihood it will be in Brussels. Okay, second project, seemingly different, but you will see that there are overlaps, not only in the considerations, but also in the roles. The second one is OSCAR. It says it's online open learning recommendations and mentoring towards sustainable research careers. So at least it has research and careers in it. It started actually in 2020 and it will stop in 2023. And this is all about a project running a digital platform to actually train you, but also to get in mentors. So that makes it interesting. And of course, also here, the role of MCAA is very interesting. So this is all about personalized training. So there's a digital platform led under the supervision of Gabor Kishmerk from the TRB. And this is actually a running platform, so that's good news. So what we want to do is we want to make it a bit better, or they want to do it a bit better, a bit smarter, so that your recommendations are better. So right now you can run LinkedIn Learning and you have 1,329 opportunities and you don't know a heck what works for you and what not. So recommendation sounds like a good idea. But to do so, you have to understand what are the domains the topics are coming from. And interestingly, we have two perspectives for this project here. One is mental health, the other was career development. And what's happening is that there are two organizations, this RUMO for mental health training, actually supplying psychologists to be your mentor. And there's CALP, who are doing career training for you. And we bring them in to bring up a curriculum, which we can put into the digital portal. But we are also figuring out ways how to get better in people to be actually in a mentorship. And then there can be an interaction. Sometimes you're the mentor, sometimes you're the platform. And you can imagine that this has to be shaped by interdisciplinary ideas. So it is very vitally important that we again have MCAA, which I'm strangely missing here. I think I deleted it when copying it over. MCAA is, of course, full partner, and also Eurodoc is an associated partner here, giving the ideas how that actually can work for future researchers. And also what we are doing is, again, dissemination, but there's also an important part, which means, let's have a look at the platform. Is this thing really working? So testing the platform can also be a job. And in fact, we now hired new people to do that. There's now a lot about the platform, but I think it will just blow your mind right now, and questions are more interesting. So I invite you to become hands-on, check the QR code, go to platform, and figure out how it could work for you. And there's the fancy job of data science, where apparently everyone thinks you can have double of your income if you put data scientist in front of your name. But we also have how to operate trains and how to do the beer brewing, because it's an open platform where everyone can put in their curriculum. So it could be also yours. And maybe it then can work for your future project. And that's also a kind of multiplier here. If projects with MCAA work very well and we raise the awareness for you, it also means you can harness them for your own research projects, or you can figure out to put them in as future partners for your research project. And that will then help your career. With that, I'm through. Thank you very much for listening. I'm open for your questions. You can contact us always through the email address, and you can find us here following the address or the QR code again. And then, do you have questions?
Thank you very much, Christian. I just took a note of what we will send as well to all participants, like the links to the two platforms as well as the email address, in case someone will have maybe questions later on. I personally enjoyed a lot, and especially to find out about the working group and what you do and what kind of support you offer. That's quite a lot of work, I think. Are there any questions?
I also want to thank a lot Christian that he managed to be today here, because it was really very useful, his talk, and deserves a lot of much more visibility in MCAA, I mean, among the members. And today it was this occasion, and it's excellent work that is going on. I think we will hear more and more in the future, because that is the direction. And actually what I found interesting is something that should have been the training for all the young researchers that get MCAA, Marie Curie, fellowship. It's part of the job that Marie Curie Fellowship should have done, and to train us for future projects, or to know more about how to maintain our mental health and all this help. And that is excellent. These two projects are exactly targeting this deficit of the training that exists in the fellowships, let's say. So it's excellent work. Thank you very much, Christian.
Yeah, it becomes a bit scary that speed goes up, mental health goes down. And it seems like there's no end. Earlier, I also see the question, by the way, I will answer in a moment. Earlier, we heard in the Swiss funds focused talk that there's a grant which is only eligible for people who are 2 or 4 years after their PhD. Mm-hmm. So it seems like the boxes we have to fit into are becoming smaller and smaller. And I don't know how it is for you, but if I have 2 years to be somewhere till I'm finished, I have no chance to do knowledge transfer to someone else. And a PI who gets such a grant, you can imagine that by the time he or she hired you to become a PhD student at the organization, your PI is gone when you're there. So it's crazy somehow.
Yeah, pressure is enormous.
Yes, it is. And unfortunately, I think it's a great Stockholm syndrome that we are in research because we showed a track record of excellency. And because we are so excellent, we try to fit to any type of requirement as unreasonable as it is. And no one says a thing. And if you are wrong, then it's because you are not smart enough. And that's a horrible narrative we are pushing forward. It's, yeah.
It's the self-guiltness after. I think Béla will explain more, or describe more about experiences of researchers. It's really painful because we are accusing ourselves, and I include myself, a lot of self-guiltness in the field.
We have received a question for you, Christian.
Yes, the question says, could you help the MSCA applicants read their application materials? And the answer is yes and no. So it's a bit tricky. We can help with that. However, we have to find people who are doing it. And then after a quick check-up, usually the slots are full. We saw that with ERC grants. So we have many successful applicants, but they're usually saying, okay, I can have a look. But actually I have like 20 minutes a week because it's a horrible situation. What we do is we support, for example, for doctoral, for grants for doctoral networks, because then most of the time MCAA can be a part of it, and then it's much easier to allocate time for that. It's, but we also have the same problem as everyone else. We are volunteers, so yeah, it's a bit tricky. Means try it, and we will tell you.
Christina, I have a question. The MCAA is an entity that is like member of Europe, a European entity, so can be partner, can be the mono beneficiary, how it's called, so can be just, oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, we can. MCAA can be a full partner. So that actually works. You have to figure out who's doing the work, and depending on the type of grant, there are different schemes or different administrative considerations you have to be aware of once you got the grant, let's say it like that. But we are eligible for most of the funding. Actually, in the Erasmus project, we get grants. So both of the grants have 30,000 euros for MCAA, and we now took part in several new grants, which see us between 30,000 and 80,000 euros of contribution, which also means we can hire you afterwards. And if you're, for example, in Switzerland, we can hire you as a consultant in Brussels for such a project. So it's also an opportunity to stock up your money.
Thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We invite right now Béla to take the floor, and Béla will, with great pleasure, we have you today here. And you are going to speak, as far as I know, about one of the chapters of your book. Yeah, so please, the floor is yours.
Well, hello, everybody. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
So I would like you to think a little bit ahead, because right now you are all postdocs and you are not doing much hiring, but think a little bit ahead and think that you have followed this great advice that Isabelle and Christian has given you. You wrote a brilliant research proposal. It got funded. You got the money. You have the project, but you need people to actually do the work, the work that you proposed. But how will you know? How will you decide whom to hire? So I talked with over 100 principal investigators, and I asked him this question. And today I want to share with you what I learned from them about this topic, how to pick new people for your team, how to select the kind of people who will help you with achieving your goals. So I know it's been already a long webinar, so I give you the conclusions right now, and if you want to get back to your experiments, you can leave after this slide. So PIs tell me that according to the PIs I've talked to, there are 3 traits that you need to look for in any candidate. And number 1 is honesty. Number 1 is communication skills. And by communication skills, I mean communication skills that are compatible with your communication style, with your personality, so that you can have a good personal connection with this person, with this new person. And third, you want people who are able to get along with others. So, and will collaborate with your other team members. So today I will, if you want to log off, you can do that now. But in case you are interested in the details, what I will tell you about is that I will, in case you have any doubts that you will need a team, Christian has said that you will need a team, but I will reinforce that notion a little bit. Then I will tell you that hiring is difficult, but it is important to hire, and it's very important to hire the right people. And then I will give you the method that was the consensus method from these 100 interviews that I conducted. So you will need a team because you will have no time to do the research yourself. The data you can see here, let me see if I can get a pointer. So in the countries that I have been working in, that's United States, Hungary, Belgium, 40 hours, about 40 hours, that's considered a full working week. So if you look at how much people, PIs told me that they work in a slow week, in the lower edge, it's the median was about 55 hours. When things get busy, it can be 60 hours, and some people are just working, you know, almost 100 hours a week. So you will just have absolutely no time to, you will be so busy, you will not have time to do experiments. I will not kid you, hiring is difficult, but actually one PI just said that that was the worst part of the job, the most horrible part of the job. But it is the single most difficult thing at the start of your lab, because you have to establish the nucleus around which you will build. But you also have to be aware that it doesn't really get easier. Even people with over 20 years of experience told me that I still make mistakes. So what you can do is really to choose carefully, because the members of your team will be your eyes and in your hands in the lab. You will know about what they tell you about, and you will not know about what they don't tell you about. And another thing why you have to be choosing very carefully is several PIs told me that one bad person can spoil the entire lab. So you want to make sure that you get compatible people. Several PIs told me that actually the best way to make hiring decisions is to avoid making them on the spot, which means that if you can have somebody in your lab for 1 to 6 months for an internship or as a master's student, then you can have the time to observe them in different situations, and then that will give you excellent information whether you want to continue with this person or not. So as one PI put it, the past performance in your lab, in the environment where the person will actually work later, is the best predictor of how things will work out later with this person. We actually get into the actual method of selecting your people. Is several PIs told me that it's worth listening to your gut, because there are many meta-communicational cues when you were dealing, we will be dealing with these people that don't become conscious, but they will inform your decision. But gut feeling is not enough. You really have to do your homework. So what is the actual procedure that you will have to follow is, well, it's going to be very similar to you, because all of you have already been interviewed for jobs. So there will be an advertising, then hopefully you will get many candidates. Then you will apply some pre-filters. We will talk about the pre-filters to make a short list. This is up to you how short this list is. It's usually between 3 and 10 people. And then you make a contact with these people on the short list using a telecommunication tool to further dwindle them down. And you get to 3 to 5 candidates that you will actually meet in person. Then you have your favorite or favorites, and you will do some vetting that you will check them out, some background checks, and then you make your decision. So let's see the details. So when about advertising your position, well, you all know the usual channels. One thing you should be aware of, that your university actually may have a policy about that. So check with them. They may dictate how to do your advertising. If they don't, one PI told me, or several actually told me, that they, instead of advertising in large magazines or other channels, they just prefer sending the job description around to their colleagues in your field, because they already have people in who more or less fit the bill, and then also they will have more background information on the people they are who are applying. And another thing you should keep in mind, especially when you're thinking about where you will want to establish your residence as a researcher, where you want to have your lab, is that the location of your lab does influence your candidate pool. There were PIs who told me that, well, my campus is not as attractive to students, so I get less candidates. Another PI told me that, well, my lab is in an extremely expensive city, and the salaries are really not adjusted to that, so I get less candidates. So be aware of that makes a difference. So you get your hopefully a large pool of candidates. How do you narrow them down? What are the pre-filters that you can apply? Well, one favorite filter of PIs is that they really want to see, did this person take an effort to find out what my group does, what I do? So does this person really want to work with me, or does this person just want a job anywhere? So that's the opinions on the importance of technical expertise varied. There are PIs who work in a highly technical field. There was, for example, one person who builds new kinds of microscopes. So for her, it was very, very important that people have the right technical expertise. But the majority of PIs actually told them that, you know, I don't hire for technical expertise because techniques can be learned, but the character, the flexibility, the willingness to learn, that cannot be learned. So I look for people who are willing to learn. You can also look at their previous experience. You know, is this a person who is hopping from one lab to another? How long can I expect to have them in the lab? You can look at their skill sets. Again, the same applies with technical expertise, that, you know, it can be learned if otherwise the person is perfect for you. You can also look at the candidate's track record. So have they won any awards? Have they had any fellowships? Have they had any publications? That's a very important pre-filter, because it shows that they can produce publishable science. The motivational letter, that's another, that can only be another pre-filter, especially seeing how much effort they put into it. It again is how much are they really targeting you, how much they want to work with you, or they just generally applying. If there should be no track record, it's a master's student or somebody who has not published anything. One PI suggested what she does is gives them a paper and then ask them, to come back in a week and tell me what you understood from it and what you didn't understand from it, and then we can chat. So after you went through these pre-filters, you hopefully got down to a list of 3 to 10 people. Then you can do just an initial contact using some telecommunication tool like Skype or Zoom that we are using now, or whatever is available to you. Because some people look very good on paper, but they may have gotten some help. So these are PIs told me that it happens that the motivational letter is written in perfect English, and then when we try to talk to the person, it turns out that we just cannot communicate. So this is important to go through this exercise and first check out. And this first contact can help you to already get an impression of the person, how if you want to go further with further explore them or not. And this will help you to narrow down the list to hopefully 3 to 5 people. And these 3 to 5 people you will have personal contact with. So because the goal of the personal contact is to determine if the candidate is a good fit for your team, for your project, and for yourself, for the PI who will be working with it. Several PIs suggested to do repeated personal contacts, and we will get into the reason why this is. But if you see that a person several times, it helps them also, because some people are very nervous at the first time, so they can redeem themselves in the second interview, or maybe you can see how well their stories check out from one day to another. So it's good for both sides. The main question that PIs ask themselves during these personal contact is, can we get along? Is there a connection with the candidate? As I said, this is one of the main criteria that PIs use to evaluate the candidates. It's a good idea to involve your team members during these personal contacts, because you want people who get along not only with you personally, that's very important, but they also have to get along with all the other team members. And afterwards, you will ask feedback from your team. You may have heard the saying that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so act accordingly. But it happens that this actually applies to hiring as well. PIs told me that they used to, well, most scientists love to talk about their work, right? And PIs told me that I used to really try to excite these people about my projects, but now I listen. I learned to listen, and they recommend that you let these people, these candidates, talk about their past experiences, about their past works, and you listen and you watch. Are they enthusiastic? Is there a sparkle in their eye when they talk about their research? Do they have passion for science? Because if they have passion, they will put in the long work hours that will be required to do the experiments. And also another thing, are they honest? Are the stories that they are telling you, are they genuine stories or something they read on the internet? Do they really know the the background of what they did. It's really a good chance to check that. If the person doesn't have much experience, you cannot expect them to talk for hours about their work. Things that you can ask them is, again, why do they want to come to your lab? They should have a clear idea of that. You can also ask them what they hope to learn from you, or during their experience, what they would like to get out of this experience in your lab. And especially at younger scientists who may have a more idealistic notion of what it happens to be what it entails to be a scientist, you can ask them, what do you think your life will be as a scientist? And you will see if how realistic that is. Since we know that doing a PhD, for example, is very stressful, another question that you can ask them is that can you think of a stressful point in your life? What did you do? And again, watch for it. Do you get genuine answers, or practical answers, detailed answers, or do you get some vague general things? The personal contact usually also involves some kind of presentation from the candidate. This can be their earlier work if they already have some experience. If not, in case of inexperienced people, some PIs just give them a paper and tell them, you try to present this, something from their lab, something they have worked on. So it's again, it's a good chance to observe the presentation skills of the candidate. It's also a good idea during the personal context to let the candidates talk with the team members of your team, if you already have some. Talk with them without you being present, because they will most candidates will feel less pressure. They will be less guarded. So you can actually, after talking with your team members, you can get more information about them. And another thing that you should not forget is let the candidates also ask questions from you. This seems like just a common courtesy, but it also informs, well, it gives them a chance to find out what they are getting into, but also it gives you another window into what they are expecting and how much they actually know what they are, what you do, what your lab is doing. So after doing all this work, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was going to be this cold, this dark here, but hopefully you can still see me. So after going through the personal contacts and choosing your few top candidates, you want to do some kind of vetting process. You want to check them out a little bit. So one way of doing this is reading the reference letters, and the opinion of PIs on the reference letters were very, very different. Some of them thought that they were more important than the CV. They read them very carefully, and some of them never read them because they think they are useless. I would still read them, because some PIs actually said that they have read reference letters that contained some bad surprises that were actually honest. But more PIs suggested that to call previous supervisors on the phone after reading the letter, because people are more willing to talk honestly, frankly about the candidate. And one PI told me that she listens for the pauses. So when she asks a question about the candidate, there's a pause, then that could be a red flag. If you've gone through this, you still have your several candidates. Another thing you could do is ask them to write a project after meeting with everybody, after meeting with you and and the members of your lab. So after having a good idea what the lab is capable of and what it has done, ask them, what would you do in my lab? So write a little brief project proposal. This is not something you will expect them to actually do, but it gives you good information of, first of all, how well they can leverage the information they got. And there might be some who will never do this. So, well, those are gone from your list. And there was one PI who actually told me that they checked the candidates' social media posts if there's anything silly there. So you will dwindle down after the vetting process. You will dwindle down your pool to hopefully 1 or 2 candidates. Many PIs said that they have their candidate, but they give their lab members the right to veto. So if they like somebody, but the lab doesn't like them, they move on. And I think that's a good idea, because that person will not work only with you, but they will work with everybody else in your lab. If you are not sure at the end, don't hire. Just go back to the square one and advertise again. If you should have several equally good candidates, then you can rank them by seeing who would fit best to my lab, who would fit best my long-term goals. What kind of profile does my lab need? One PI said that in every lab you need a person who is very social and will organize all the outings and everything. So if all other things being equal, pick that person if you don't already have someone in your lab. Another thing a PI said that they want people who will stand up to them. So they don't want, having clones of yourself in the lab might be a comfortable position, but on the long term, it will not be good for your science. So you want some people who will tell you, who will keep you honest, and you will tell you that your favorite hypothesis is not working out. So in repeat, when you look for people, this is what you should be looking for. You want somebody who is honest. You want somebody with good compatible communication skills, compatible with your communication style, and you want somebody who gets along with others. And if you manage to fill your lab with people like this, you will already be off to a good start. And that's all I had to say about hiring today. One last slide is that what I told you was from this book that Nicoletta was kindly already mentioning. This is chapter 3, but I try to go through all the aspects of a PI's life. So how to find your project, how to find your scientific identity. The book talks about writing project applications, writing papers, how to deal with stress, the daily work, many aspects. It's for most of you, it should be available freely through your university, through the Nature book packages. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you, Béla, for your time, for willing to share with us all of these stories, and also to take us with you in this journey of what PIs think and how is the best to make and to develop your own team. I'm sorry that it's already such a late hour and it's quite dark.
Yes. Yeah, I should have turned on my, let me just try to turn it on.
Please, if you have any questions, if you can write them.
I must have been very clear because there are no questions.
I can share I just recently graduated with PhD, and I never thought that I should think of so many aspects while I want, if I want to continue with a scientific career, you're like, definitely the team is key. And I was on the other side of the bridge. So now seeing all of his perspectives, it just made me to start thinking, okay, I need to be also to think of, it's, at least that's my...
Well, this particular chapter, I think it's useful for people who are applying also, because at least you have an idea what goes through the mind of the person sitting on the other side of the table, and what are they looking for. So you can tailor your story that Christian has helped you to develop to their taste.
Exactly. Thank you, Béla. Just a comment. I think it's also very interesting for people that they want to apply for ERC grants. So they have to have in mind that is the next step, because they have to make their own team and continue. It's not just for one person, but it's for the team, the funding, actually. I found it very interesting that how to spot, let's say, to understand after a few interviews, maybe more than one, who is honest, the honesty. It's very difficult part, because a lot of people maybe give the wrong impression, some very good impression, but it's not really honest. I mean, it could be that they catch up with things very fast, but then they are lazy and they don't continue. And some that they are very timid, let's say, and modest, and then you lose them. So how you can discriminate this part? We are not psychologists. It's experience probably, but maybe you have insights on this.
Several people said that they are just allergic to overselling people. So that's actually something that, and I think that's why repeated contact with the candidates is important, because even a timid person, will tell you more at the second time. The overselling people who claim to have done more than they actually have, if you ask them and probe them, you get an idea that this is not not really everything that he probably didn't do everything he claims to have done. When it comes to details, I think these things come out, but to have the time to talk about the details, you need to see them several times, because
to work with you 1 to 6 months. That's probably
yes,
the best.
that's exactly. Some people, I said that 9 out of 10 times they they hire previous interns, and it has several. Besides seeing them in different situations, it also helps you to evaluate them without really having to decide on the spot, and that's the best way.
We have received 2 questions, and I think a quite important point comment. The first question is, as a junior researcher, I was wondering how many months in advance I should contact the host if I want to go to a new lab.
I'm afraid that's not that wasn't something I asked these PIs. Well, in general, the sooner the better, but I don't think I can give you a number on the top of my head, but no, I really cannot tell. Christian, do you have an idea about that?
I think it also.
Oh, unfortunately not. It's also, I don't know. It seems like getting in contact before applying for the position. I don't get that completely.
Maybe it's in terms of applying for fellowship and going to a lab. How much time? Yeah.
Usually, if it's a job position, you have all of, like, the opening, it's written on the website of the research group, and the deadline as well of the application. I mean, all of these details should be kind of already written in the announcement. Well, we have a more interesting question, which is, how would you handle a conflict in the lab? If you, Béla, maybe can give any tips about
I'm terrible at handling conflict. So it's, I think the best is to, to get people who will not get into conflict. But some conflict is unavoidable because there are usually limited resources and people will need them. So there will be some conflict. If the PI should get into it, well, again, so what I have done, what I have told you so far was what I learned from the PIs, and now I will have to shift into my personal opinion, which is much less valuable in my opinion. I think these things, it's like having kids. Sometimes you just let them straighten things out between themselves. If things get chronic, then you will have to confront it. There is another chapter in the book when I asked PIs about how they handle underperforming people. So and the conclusion was that the sooner you act, once you see that there is a problem, then you really have to act as soon as possible. So if I know about the two things I've just said that they seem to contradict each other, but if there's there's a shouting match in the lab, I wouldn't jump off my chair just immediately. But if it becomes a chronic thing that happens and happens and happens, deal with it and sit down the people and deal with it directly. So don't make allusions or call it out directly, because we come from just as Christian was saying, that we come from so many different backgrounds that if I try to tell you something that I grew up in Hungary, then I lived in the US, and now I'm living in Belgium, my frame of reference is completely different than somebody who is coming I don't know, who lived all his life in Belgium. So even if I try to insinuate something, they will not be able to compute it, or they will compute it, but they may not compute it the same way that I intended. So it's best to say that, okay, this is how I see it. This is how I would like it to be. How do we get from here to there?
And if you're not satisfied with the performance of the person that you have hired, so if it was not the best choice, how much tolerance you have to show depends on you, how you will train them to make them better, how much time you give the people to adjust. Some people are slower than some are faster. So what you do, how much responsibility is for you?
Well, exactly. That has to be tailored. So going back to this addressing the problem directly is one thing that PIs told me, that be direct, be the most direct that person can handle. So because you don't want to break people. So, and again, you have to make milestones. Hopefully things will get better, not in weeks, not in months, because you will not have time to wait weeks, especially if you are starting a lab. This also depends on the HR policies of your university, but I think you have to schedule reviews, feedback meetings, and handle these problems head on, because they don't get better. That's what PIs told me.
So someone makes the comment that besides that it's a very nice presentation, and I think the person also thanks you for the tips.
Thank you.
Says that the person thinks that the knowledge is also key. Lots of talk is not enough. And I think you mentioned that indeed some PIs prefer to give them to talk about their research projects and their presentations, not only setting up calls and just discussions.
Knowledge, the knowledge of the scientific field or knowledge of I'm not quite sure what.
I think it's about scientific knowledge.
Well, yes, but that will come out during the presentation. It will come out during talking with the previous about their previous work, how they can put it in context, what they did, what it means. I think this will all come out during the
still talking.
It's still talking. One thing I would like to tell people who are now postdocs is that 90% of your time will be spent talking. And that's something that you have to be prepared for.
So communication counts,
Yes.
overall.
Yes. No, that's something I did not realize when, Nicoletta said that I tried to be an innovation manager and it didn't work for me. Is when I was a postdoc, I didn't realize how much time I actually spend alone doing experiments. And I'm an introvert. You probably have guessed by now. And for me, having a job where I had to talk 7 hours a day, meetings, that was torture. And if you are, there are ways of dealing with this. So just because you are an introvert, you can still be a PI. There are PIs who are introverts, but it's something you should be aware of, that you will have to communicate.
Actually, I found very interesting also your article in Nature, that you said how some people can manage to get a tenure track and some not. So how well you have to plan your career, and what there is not the best recipe, but all of these in combination, I think it makes sense, because you have to plan your next steps and not just focus on your experiment and just think that your result will pay off and everybody will open the door. So networking works, good communication. And I found interesting how some people are getting involved in many projects so that they know something will be successful. So how much you have to focus in one project and be successful. So all of this combination of all these opinions and actually practical examples were very interesting in your article. I found it very interesting.
Great.
So for me, actually, I started like you, focusing on how I can deliver the best result, and then this will pay off. And then growing up, I understood a lot of other things that play a role. So it's experience, but it takes time to get this. So it was not natural for me.
That's why we need the EURESEARCH, so we can develop our
backwards
vision,
to retro perspective. Backwards, and give the best advice is this from your own experience. And also what you do is testimonies, if I can say, examples of researchers, what it worked for them. And because there is no best recipe, it depends on the character of each one. But I think planning is a good starting point. So before you finish a post, already to plan where to go after, for example. I found it very good.
Yes, there was one PI who was telling me that he always keeps this helicopter view. So you are in the project, you look for, but you always have to come up and see the helicopter view, seeing forward. And I know I was terrible at that. I am still terrible at that. So that's one thing that I would not make a good PI.
Well, I think good scientists, it is a bit that, to focus on your science and your lab. And this is how always started. That was the ideal way of thinking of a scientist, but it's not enough.
It's not enough, no.
I think in the end, also many things are about profiles, and it doesn't mean like having the best profile, but you have a unique profile. It's I mean, now the pain of hiring a person actually resonates a lot with me. We also had to go through that in our team now, and it's not an easy thing. And I already worked with extremely smart people with a great character, great capabilities, cheerful, and we barely avoided to kill each other. And it becomes very apparent then quickly that this is not a problem of that person. It's not a problem of us. It's a problem of the combination of people,
of the fit,
of the setup. Yeah. And it was a very hard road to realize both of us are in the wrong room. It's something very hard to learn, especially because every one of us is different. It's very tricky. It's not always also possible to solve that. Also, I still believe, let's see who I set up with it, that academia is full of functional psychopaths. Because we are highly specialized and highly trained. And functional psychopath is only one type of person who has a misaligned skill set in a way. It's not negative. And it means every one of us has a really big blind spot. And it's very hard to figure out what it is. And then to be honest enough to acknowledge that each of us has such. Yeah, it's tricky. But I feel the pain. I was wondering, I also noted down several questions. But there was one interesting question, maybe you can reflect on it, you had it on the slides, in the hiring procedure. How, when you asked the people who are joining you for hiring, how did you solve a problem in the past? And it was very interesting because I can tell we asked such a question in an interview. Or we even gave a situation which was unsolvable, and we asked them how would they think they solve it, and we got zero answers. It was, as you could really see that it was a question worth asking, but no one had an answer. That was very tricky. So, what did you collect about that?
As I was putting together the presentation, this is a straight quote from one of the PIs, and I was like, if somebody asked me that question, I would be in trouble, because I think I've had my share of stresses in my life, but you somehow forget it. That once it's done, you just go past it. But maybe I think you can also help the people out, especially younger students. Has this happened in your life? Has that happened in your life? And then what did you do? That's how I would do it. But if I was interviewing tomorrow, I would really have to sit down and what would be my examples. But because I try to forget those. But I think that's a question you really have to tease people out of people. But one thing you will have to be prepared when you ask such a question, that you can get sometimes horrific answers. That one PI told me that I learn very, very personal things from people, and once you ask this question, you have to be prepared for that, to listen with empathy and listen to the end.
Yeah, especially health issues, how they overcome some people, diseases, and
yes, that also happens.
There may be a situation is best. I can tell it's not easy. Also on that front, we asked the situation in conflict of a paper and student supervision, and we got very inhumane answers. So we stopped asking the question because people answered from the top of their head because they had no imagination how they could solve it. And it was very hard to forget it afterwards. And it was really not their fault because we tried to hire master students for PhD positions. So they couldn't have an answer for that. No, that was not good. There's a question.
Yes, and the question is what to do when in the face of academic bullying from a supervisor, often threatened with dismissal?
Oh.
So can we offer any advice?
It's something you have to take up with HR. I think it's especially if it's not a unique situation, because people who bully, they don't bully just one person usually. But no, I really don't have expertise in that. I think you would have to take that up with HR, and universities. I think they are sensitized for these kinds of issues now. So probably it would have been harder to get remedy for this in 10 years ago. I think today is easier. But if you take it up with HR, you will also have to be prepared to move on. But if you are in an untenable situation, it's better to move on anyway, and at least you may have helped the future situation. You can just move, leave, not say anything, but that will not help the next generation. If you call a bully out, it will not help you, because you will not want to stay in that lab, because probably not. But at least it might help future lab members. That's it's again, it's not something I specifically asked PI, so I cannot. I'm just relying on my own experience.
I can tell something from the experience out of the EURESEARCH training, because we already ran 2 summer schools, and in both of them we had 2, in one we even had 4 psychologists on board for one day, and this question comes up every time.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no answer. Which is very interesting, because I was expecting that if I'm meeting someone from the counseling service, they would have a very strict answer. And I know they're from Trinity College, so in Trinity College, you can actually do something against the supervisor. So even they didn't had a recipe. And it seemed to me, at least from the scenarios, that it is very important that you get a link to the outside somehow. Because you are always, with a supervisor who is highly abusive, you are likely to end up in a kind of Stockholm situation. So it's very important to get an outside perspective to either figure, not to blame anyone, but to get out of the black hole you're stuck in. And maybe from that perspective, you then have an idea about HR and so on. But being alone is the worst in such a scenario.
Yeah, sometimes for your own sanity, the best is to leave. Let's say, even if you change supervisor, still will be around the old supervisor and could influence other of his colleagues or her colleagues. It's really difficult to continue, I think. There will be other opportunities in life, so you have to think that you'll find something better. This is also my advice. So just go.
Yeah, it's a bit ugly. I figured out for Marie Curie members, because they're very alone in their location. It's I took also part in the referent program, and I don't want to repeat myself. You're very on. And there was one trick, which was find a second supervisor. So usually in those teams there are other supervisors, and then you get another perspective. And in a case which I knew, then and at the end, they switched. So the person switched into the other team, could remain in the field the person was working in, and then had a better situation. And there was also no fallout because they didn't dared to do that internally. So, but,
it's okay. Yeah, depends on the situation. It's okay, but it's difficult. It's really, again, that the PI should have some training. It's important how to do. Now we see two aspects from PI and from the people that work for PIs. But PI, to be PI is a responsibility. It's not just you get some project and you hire people. So it was nice discussing with you. It takes longer than we anticipated, but
oh my God, yes.
yeah, we're 10 minutes over.
Well, I think we can close our meeting, but before that, I would like once again to thank you, Béla and Christian, for your time and for making the presentation and coming to us and sharing all your knowledge and experience with us. Thank you also to Odota for organizing the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nicoletta, and all the speakers who were here today, and for the nice discussion.
And also
Thank you.
to attendancy, especially those that were quite active. We are always happy to take your questions, and we try to consider all of them. With that, thank you once again, and I wish you a pleasant and safe weekend.
Yeah, and then maybe see you on the General Assembly.
Yes, indeed.
Wish you the best.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.